Hey, it's Jordan with TYT and TYT Network. It is Sunday, April 9th. It is cloudy here in New York. I have my extraordinary editor and cameraman, Eric Byler, coming from D.C. This week, the media has been on fire, obsessed with what I call qualified gate. Bernie Sanders said that Hillary Clinton wasn't qualified to be president in response to her kind of insinuating that he wasn't qualified. The media really jumped on the fact that she didn't literally, to the letter of the word, say he's not qualified. So essentially went after Sanders, saying, he's attacking Secretary Clinton. All of her surrogates went on TV saying he's the worst thing in the world and he should apologize. And Sanders, to his credit, showed a little New York muscle and said he's not going to apologize, but let's move on. This was literally an obsession over the fact that he said she wasn't quote unquote qualified. There was no focus on records. Literally whole segments about this were focused on, the tension and the rhetoric are mounting in New York because, the media loves conflict.
A first-rate resume
Absolutely.
In terms of a life in public service.
All that I'm saying, look, Charlie.
And she's one of the most qualified people.
She has years of experience. She is extremely intelligent.
So what can't you say?
Because she is, I have some experience too.
I tweeted out earlier this week, go figure, a heated war of words between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, and they're now leading shows instead of Donald Trump.
So shouldn't you be happy? I mean, aren't you happy now? I mean, it's not.
No, I'm happy that there's more coverage. The problem is what the coverage is. They're not covering the issues. They're not covering the records. They're not covering the central argument of Sanders' campaign, which is she's compromised and she's not progressive. They're covering the fact that he said she's not qualified, and mostly from a critical light. It hasn't been friendly to him. So I think the media, even when Sanders is more aggressive, and this is my fault for being a little naive, even when he's a little more aggressive, and let's be clear, I mean, he didn't really start this. How this started was right after the Wisconsin win, there was a Washington Post article saying that Hillary Clinton doesn't think he's qualified. So that's what Bernie was responding to. But Bernie has missed opportunities. For example, I was in Los Angeles at the Young Turks. He gave a speech, I believe it was in San Diego or L.A., talking about the Walton family, how they, obviously the owners of Walmart, they are very, very wealthy. They pay their workers next to nothing. Bernie didn't take that opportunity to say Hillary Clinton was on the board of Walmart for many, many years. In debates, he's referenced and been the overall fact that she takes a lot of money from Wall Street, but he hasn't been specific on specific donors that are very, very questionable in terms of, if you look at some of the reports I've done, I've gotten into, the nitty gritty of naming names and why it is that their contributions to her should be put into question. So that's what I was talking about. I guess the fact that they're leading shows, the battle between them is a good thing. I just think if you watch the coverage, it hasn't been so friendly to Bernie. I wrote a piece this week for Mediaite.com. The title was TV News' 2016 coverage will permanently drive away young viewers. And I gave an example how Chris Cuomo, right after Wisconsin, Hillary Clinton, did the cable news rounds, and she went on CNN and MSNBC, and I explained in that story how they've been very biased in favor of her. Chris Cuomo interviews her. She continues to go against Senator Sanders' gun record. I don't agree with his gun record in some aspects, but overall, I think she has exploited it and made it a bigger thing than it actually is. She continues to go after him on guns, basically portraying herself to be this warrior hell-bent on fighting the NRA. The problem is she just held a fundraiser, a very big dollar fundraiser, where one of the co-hosts of that fundraiser, contributing, I think it was $20,000, was a registered lobbyist for the National Rifles Association until the end of last year. So as of 5 minutes ago, this guy was a lobbyist for the NRA. He lobbied on Second Amendment rights, trying to, against gun control, and she's taking his money. So was that asked? Was that even brought up? No, it wasn't brought up in the Morning Joe interview. It's not brought up in articles where they're talking about her and her offensive against Sanders. So I think there's really not in-depth coverage. Do I think that the TV news is intentionally, not including that? I don't know. I don't know if they're lazy. I don't know if they're so used to politics as usual and candidates saying one thing and taking money on the other end that it's not a big deal to them. But to me, that's a big deal. And I don't know how informed people are getting because, and also I think there's an issue that since Iraq is 13 years ago, it's not really being covered as much. You remember in 2008, her vote on Iraq was covered more as a central issue in the campaign because it was Iraq was still going on at that point. Now it's not. And I think that's not that it's hurt Sanders, but that issue hasn't really come into focus.
Well, I think those things, it's up to the Sanders campaign to make sure that they're covered, to make sure that they're in the news. I've never heard Bernie Sanders say a lot of the things that you bring up about other people who attend Clinton fundraisers. I'm not sure why that is, but certainly the corporate media, or actually one of our viewers suggested that we call it the soap opera media. They are very much entrenched in the world that is, the world that was before Bernie Sanders and frankly Donald Trump came along and threw a wrench in this whole notion that in order to run for president or really senator and even House of Representatives, you need the support of the business community. In other words, you need these high dollar donations from corporations, from their employees, from lobbyists in order to compete. It was the system. For such a long time, the Supreme Court decided to make it even worse because they feared that Barack Obama would be reelected. They feared the emerging electorate that would choose an African-American president. Then they gutted the Voting Rights Act right after he won re-election. There's a war going on right now, and until very recently, there was only one way to fight that war in many people's minds, and Bernie Sanders, to his immense credit, is proving there's another way. Not everybody has kind of seen the light yet.